Oh, cool.
Hello? Hello? Okay, welcome. I'm Isaac, and today we're going to be doing, I guess you could call it a sous vide primer, but a lot of people know about sous vide. It's all over the internet, it's all over social media. So the purpose of this class isn't necessarily about handing out recipes. There's going to be a lot of recipes and techniques shared, but it's more about giving you the knowledge to be able to basically come to your own conclusions and to essentially not just create your own recipe, but understand why certain things work and why certain things don't. Okay, and throughout there'll be like a tasting of a few of the proteins and vegetables we'll be cooking. Okay, so to start it off, we're going to start off exactly what sous vide is. Sous vide is literally, it essentially means cooking. I mean, sous means basically means under pressure, right? So the whole where sous vide started is where you're basically cooking in a vacuum, right? How does that work? You're taking a piece of protein or a vegetable, you're putting it into a vacuum bag, and then you're running it through a vacuum sealer, but not a vacuum sealer like you'd have at home. It's a chamber vacuum sealer that basically removes 99.9% of the oxygen and has that meat like locked in there, right? So what are the benefits? I mean, I'm not here to sell you on the nutritional stuff and all that. I'm sure that's all true and wonderful, but that's not why I cook sous vide. I don't care if my carrots are more nutritious than the carrots are going to boil in a pot. What I care about, when I'm focused on, is flavor, texture, and efficiency. All right, so over here, we basically sous vide, I'd say 70% of our menu, and you wouldn't know it. But we do that here mainly for like pasteurization, so that we can have long shelf lives, so things can taste fresher, taste juicier, and just all around better quality and more consistency. Now, everything that we do here, you can translate to home, because I'm not using any fancy ingredients. It only requires one piece of machinery, and with this, you can literally do everything I'm going to do. So I'm just going to start off by quickly running through the actual machine. This is like a basic, cheap immersion circulator. Of all like the budget ones that come under $150, this is the only one I recommend. We don't use this here, but I use this at home. Looks like this. This is basically a heater. So when you plug it in, you set a temperature, it sets it to that temperature. Now for cooking, the temperature is only one thing. Because if I set this to 100 degrees, and this part over here is going to be 100 degrees, this part over here could be 60 or 50, right? And that's not really very good because, oh, it's not going to be 60 or 50, I'm exaggerating, but you get the idea. It's not going to be consistent, right? So it also has a pump which circulates the water, which ensures that the water all the way around is, can you turn off that music? It's driving me nuts, so that it circulates around and you have a consistent temperature. What happens to an oven when you set it to 300, right? You preheat it for an hour, it should be 300, right? But all ovens go like this, right? They fluctuate. It goes on, basically the gas will go up higher and lower. The electric will turn on and off to maintain a temperature, but also conserve power. So you think you're cooking at 300, you're cooking at 250, 325, 285, which gives you very inconsistent results and doesn't give you control. But with sous vide, you set a temperature and you can walk away and you can essentially forget it, right? In theory. So we're going to be going over, I'm putting way too much thought into this, what we're going to be go over is exactly what you can do with sous vide, what its benefits are, a few safety concerns, and in general, I'm going to give you some guidelines so you can create your own recipes, okay? Now, when you think about cooking, you think about a recipe, all you look at is, okay, what temperature, how long, right? I want to do a braise, I'm going to do 300 degrees, I'm going to do it for 2.5 hours, it's going to come out tender, right? You have to check it, you have to play with it, but that's how you're thinking about it, okay, that amount of time. Now, something that's not taken into like consideration is not, we focus too heavily on the temperature, but not the amount of time we're either able to cook it or are willing to cook it. So, if you look at a piece of chicken, right? What temperature does everyone say you're supposed to cook your chicken to at home? 165, right? Now, over here, we cook our chicken to 144 degrees. So when you're cooking it to 165 degrees, you have to hold it there for 1 minute to make sure everything's killed off. So sorry, with sous vide comes science and health. Because you have no choice. You have to understand it. So when you're cooking like a piece of poultry to 165, it has to sit in that temperature, I don't know the exact amount of time, probably about a minute or 3 seconds or 4 seconds, whatever it is, in order to kill off the salmonella or whatever nasty stuff you have in there, right? Remember, chicken, natural product, they run around in fields, they eat poop, they do. You want to have that in consideration. Now, when you do it at a lower temperature, okay, you need to hold it at that temperature for a longer period of time in order to pasteurize it. So here, I cook 140, once it hits 144 degrees, I'm leaving it there for 23 minutes. That ensures that it's safe to eat, and it also will stay in my vacuum bag, which we don't do here, but it will stay in my fridge probably for 2 weeks and can sit in your freezer indefinitely. I'll pull it out, finish it on a grill. No one will know that it wasn't fresh. And nobody knows that it's not fresh. Whoever said it's not fresh, they're just trying to be, fun and nice, which is cool. So does everyone understand that, or are there questions on that? It's not just about the temperature, it's how long it's at that temperature that makes it safe to eat. All right, so it's not just about cooking something to 140 degrees. It has to be cooked to that temperature for a long period of time, okay? Now the boring stuff is out of the way. Okay, so with sous vide, everybody that comes in here always asks, what can I cook sous vide? It's always meat. They always want to cook meat for Shabbos, right? They want to put it in the bag. They want to show it off and show everybody, look at this amazing new toy, right? And it's cool. I totally support that. It's amazing. It's good for my ego because I get to talk about it. And at the same time, it always has really cool results. But what's great about sous vide is you can cook something in the beginning of the week, have it for the entire week, including Shabbos. All you have to do is finish it. So Thursday, Friday, which are when you're usually preparing for the weekend, but they're usually very hectic and busy days. Monday, Tuesday, even Sunday, it's a lot slower. So you're actually able to move most of your work to the beginning of the week. So at the end of the week, you can focus on whatever you want to focus on. Family, friends, hobbies, So what I like to start off whenever I do sous vide, I like to talk about vegetables, okay? Vegetables, when I got into sous vide, I don't like sous vide meats at all, okay? When you cook sous vide, since it's cooking evenly and since it's cooking so perfectly in the bag, it doesn't lose as much moisture. It's also at a lower temperature, right? When you don't lose moisture, you're not concentrating flavor. When you take a piece of meat and put it into a dry oven, you're drying it up, you're reducing moisture, you're intensifying flavor. So when you cook a piece of steak sous vide, and you put it next to a piece of steak cooked conventionally, and it's being cooked by someone really good, that conventionally cooked piece of meat will always be better than the sous vide piece of meat. Most people cannot cook a steak perfectly in a saute pan. So hence, my cooks cannot cook a piece of sous vide perfectly in a steak pan. They didn't go to culinary school, right? So, or they're not passionate enough about it, but we're not going to talk about that. So, in general, it helps give you that consistency. So, steak cooked in a bag is a 9, right? Cooked perfectly on a stovetop, it's a 10. Cooked poorly on a stovetop, it's a 1. So I would rather have a 9 all the time than that 10 and that 1, right? Although I like the 1, they can only get better, set those low expectations. But anyways, when it comes to cooking vegetables always cook unevenly in the oven. Especially something like butternut squash. If you're not cutting it perfectly, you're going to have pieces that are really mushy, pieces that are really hard. What you want ideally is everything should be cooked the same. So that is great about sous vide. So we're going to start off with actually sous videing some butternut squash, and then we're going to talk about eggplant. So, butternut squash. Whenever I'm peeling vegetables or working with dirty stuff, I always have a pan underneath. That way, all I have to do is dump it in the garbage, and it's nice and easy. Because I really don't like switching out cutting boards. I don't like, time is valuable. Theoretically, you can cook the skin as well sous vide, and the skin will be tender. Just on a side note. The reason why it's not as tender in the oven, because that high temperature dries out the skin and makes it chewy. At the low temperature, the skin will actually be completely tender. So it's another upside. Now, the reason why I don't use the bottom I'll use for soup, is because the area closest to the seeds is going to be softer, riper, and that will not cook at the same rate as the neck. That being said, you can still do it. It'll still be delicious and better than roasting it in the oven, but it's not going to look as pretty on the plate. So for butternut squash, you can cut it however you want. Cut it into rounds. Dice it up. Make sticks. Now, how do you package for sous vide? Everybody here knows what a food saver is, a vacuum sealer? So vacuum sealers that a lot of people have at home, originally they're for hunters because they would go out, hunt and then take their deer home, their game home, and butcher it down, they'd freeze it. You don't want to freeze in a vacuum bag, in a food saver bag, in a Ziploc bag, because there's still oxygen inside and it'll get freezer burn. So when you vacuum seal it, you remove more of the oxygen, hence less freezer burn. However, that being said, cooking in a Ziploc bag, make sure it is the freezer one, not the storage one. All right, the freezer one. Because the storage one is not made for heat and extreme cold, and the plastic will break down, but not the freezer ones. You literally just put it in, and you do what's called the water displacement method for sealing it. Now, first I'm going to season it in the bag. I'm going to put a little bit of salt, a little bit of grapeseed oil. You can use canola, any oil you want, really. Put a little bit of maple syrup. And I'll take it, so I'm going to leave it open. You put it into a thing of water, preferably the bath that's already running, because you don't need to have two big things of water. You put it in, and the water is going to push out the excess air. It takes a few seconds. It works better for bigger pieces, but it'll work just fine for this as well. And once it's in there, it'll work better on a piece of meat, but this is the method. Keep going down, and you close it, or you leave it open, and you just put a twist tie on the outside, and it's going to stay down there. Every now and then it'll float up, it'll pop back down, but as long as there's no oxygen in there, it will stay down. I'll show you on another bag, just because I'm struggling with that one. This was done in a food saver, not a food saver, but similar. No oxygen, it stays down. You'll see it'll circulate up and down every now and then. But if you're having trouble, which I do sometimes at home with Ziploc, all you have to do is take something heavy, food safe, throw it in there with it. No more problem, right? You can use butter knives, spoons, forks, anything food safe that won't break down. You don't want to put aluminum in there, right? Now, eggplant. What's great about eggplant, and you're actually going to be trying the eggplant now. It's basically what happens when you cook eggplant sous vide is it doesn't get mushy or soft. It remains firm, but it's fully cooked, and it's almost custardy, right? When you take eggplant and you put it in a fryer, it tends to get chewy and dried out. When you do it on a grill, it gets all shriveled. Because when you're applying high heat, you're reducing moisture and water. Less water, you're going to have something that's, denser, chewier. When you keep the water in there, you're still going to retain that really nice texture. It's almost like a raw texture, but it's fully cooked. So for eggplant, I like doing it whole, but you can do it in slices also. I literally just put it in, and all vegetables, by the way, I either cook at 185 degrees for 90 minutes, or I cook at 194 for a half hour. So basically the higher temperature is great when you're in a rush and you want to get it done, and it works beautifully. At 185, you're going to have a less risk of turning to mush. Like you can leave it there for a while. I don't even season it with anything. I literally just take the whole eggplant, I put it in. Another thing you could do, by the way, if you're having issues, is you do this. And we do that here also. I'll just cover it like that with something heavy. And I always cover them with plastic wrap, because that way the temperature is maintained and less water evaporates. All right? So these cook for about a half hour, an hour, and then what happens is nobody really wants to eat a piece of boiled eggplant or a piece of boiled butter and squash, right? You're going to be eating a piece of boiled butter and squash because you have to see what the texture's like. I don't. So I pre-cooked over here both of those. Get that back down there. Nope, wrong bag. This happens a lot. Okay. Take the bag out. I open it up. Paper towel. I'll remove like that, just because it's easier to work with something that's somewhat dry. And if you look at the texture of this now, when I put my knife flat, I'm applying pressure, it's not getting mashed. You can actually, I don't know, can you guys see that? You see I'm actually pushing down, I'm applying, and now I have to apply a lot of pressure for it to start falling apart. All right, but it's still very much intact. You can actually look closely, and I'll leave it up here for you guys to see. If you want to come around, or I'll pass it around actually, you can actually look at it. It actually almost looks like spaghetti squash, because the fibers are still intact, right? So I'll just start down here. You guys can pass it around. Just take a look. You can touch it. I won't tell. No one's eating it. But then if you want to actually, you want it to taste delicious and not just be a perfect texture, you have to do something to it. So I like just tossing it with like a vinaigrette. I think it's really nice. Another thing you can do is just sear it off to give it a little bit of color, and season it however you want. So I usually just, get a hot pan going, get it coloring. While this is getting color, we'll talk about the eggplant. And I'm going to pass this around. I encourage you to touch it, actually. This is just coated lightly in oil, but if you look at it, you have to apply some pressure until it actually goes through. It's cooked fully, but you can't just break it apart with your finger. You actually have to physically touch it, like push it in. And for the eggplant, it's good to, you can put it on a grill, you can put it on, you can fry it after. And remember, since it's already fully cooked, you want to cook it on as high heat as possible. Because by cooking it on that really, really high heat, you'll give the texture and some flavor to the outside, but the inside's not going to overcook. All right? This applies to all vegetables, all proteins that you cook sous vide. When you have a fully cooked protein, you just want to give it color and texture. Yes? Why would I not season it before? Okay. if I'm, you can season it before, but why shouldn't I season it after? The seasoning is not penetrating during the cooking into a starchy root vegetable. A marinade would. So when let's say I want to do like a Korean marinade, I'll put it in the marinade and it'll have more flavor. I can put salt in the pan and salt before. I mean, it's always better to season it before, but the reality is, I mean, how many of you are cooking sous vide every day that know the exact amount of seasoning to put in a bag of potatoes? I know when I'm cooking potatoes in my kitchen, how much salt I got to put into the water when I'm boiling it, right? But that's a lot of water. There's no water here. So theoretically, you can season it a little and then, put it in. But with something like eggplant, when you pre-season it, that salt is going to start pulling out moisture. You're going to get a different product. When you're sous videing it, there's no need to salt your eggplant. There's no bitterness. First of all, bitterness has been genetically modified out of modern eggplant. All right? All these myths about seeds, this being more bitter, that being more bitter. Eggplant is not as bitter as it was 10 years ago. That being said, you want to get out some more of the bitterness or have it sweeter, yeah, you can pre-salt it. But pre-salting eggplant before sous vide is going to give you a very different product. It's something to have in mind. So you can see like this is getting some nice color. And while I'm doing this, let's talk about seasoning when it comes to actually cooking meat sous vide and poultry sous vide, which is what most people are interested in. I don't want to say never, I rarely pre-season my meat before I cook it sous vide. If you take a piece of chicken, the second you apply salt to it, you're changing the texture of the chicken. That salt's pulling out moisture, it's breaking down the protein, it's essentially curing it. So if I'm salting it and it's cooking for an hour and a half with a piece of chicken, is it going to make a difference? No. But a piece of short rib that's cooking for 24 hours, that salt is going to give you a very different product than if you cook it without salt. And you don't need the salt as a preservative because time is the preservative. So there's no health benefit or safety benefit. Now, can you take the butternut squash, fry it for a second to give it color, vacuum bag it, and then cook it? Yes. Because what you're doing is, by searing it, you're giving it flavor. Now it's cooking in that flavor, it's going to intensify it, right? So when you're pre-searing it, you do have the benefit of added flavor, but at the same time, I'm going to sear it after anyways, and I'm pretty sure most people can't tell the difference. I can't. And I eat a lot of seared and sous vide meats. Okay, so here's the thing with Google. Everything I know about sous vide, I got from Google. I started this 16 years ago, all right, at one at home, like a laboratory one. There's so much information out there, but there's so much false information out there. So like, what I present are things that I have used and I know work for me. Also, there's that whole myth of kosher meat, non-kosher meat. I have used both. There's no difference. I mean, I've sous vide every cut of meat imaginable, kosher and non-kosher. Just because we salt our meat, our short ribs are not salted than short ribs by a non-kosher butcher. The short rib itself isn't getting dipped into that salt bath. The whole primal is getting dipped into that salt bath. That short rib is covered in fat. It takes a long time for salt to penetrate like that. So once you're trimming off that excess fat, once you're cleaning it off, you essentially have the same piece of meat. Is it the same for skirt steak? No. Skirt steak is a small muscle. Hanger steak is a small muscle. Beef cheek is a small muscle. That's why all these things are salty, because they have more contact with salt when you're koshering them, right? But not a whole primal. My filet, my center cut ribeye, is just as salty as anyone else's center cut ribeye. Chicken is another story. Chicken is much smaller, more contact with salt, going to be saltier, okay? Any questions while I'm flipping eggplant? Yes? Pardon? Okay. The Joul's great. The thing about the Joule is you need a phone. Yeah, I don't want to use my phone. I don't want to, that's the thing, it's a little annoying. Like, I want to do like a lot of things at once, like to have to open up the app, change it, then close it, and it also slows down my iPhone. It's a great machine. The Anova does have Bluetooth, if you buy the Bluetooth one. It has the same benefits, but if you own a Joule, there's no reason to buy one. So in case anyone's wondering, there's tons of different types out there. Anova is essentially one of the first or second that was made for home use. So Eggplant, butter and squash is cooked. I'll get it right into a bowl. I just season it up with salt. What you're going to be eating later has walnut oil on it. A little red wine vinegar for acidity. Maple syrup for sweetness. This wasn't cooked with anything but salt. This one.
It doesn't matter, like, the consistency of how vegetables starts out, cook it the same amount of time no matter what.
Yeah. Well, when you're dealing with 185 and 196, yes. I'm not going to cook a mushy butternut squash. I'm going to put that in the garbage. But a mushy eggplant, I would cook it at 185. It's not going to be toothy. It's not going to really have a great texture. It's going to have like a off funky flavor, but it's still edible. But if you're talking about soft vegetables like cucumber, I mean, I do cook cucumber sous vide, but for I don't know why. Just like I'm bored and I need to come up with a new dish, so I throw it in a bag and I can label it all cool. But the reality is, I mean, what's soft vegetable? Bananas, right? Bananas are another story. But this is why you have Google. Bananas I cook at 140. But in general, vegetables that you're going to be using at home and on a regular basis are 185 to 196. Pardon? Plantains. So what's great about plantains is it's like a whole other world. So plantains, you can pre-cook sous vide at 140, then smash them to fry them. So it speeds up the process, and it's a lot easier. Plantains look like bananas, but you have to cook them twice, usually. Any other vegetable sous vide questions? No? Onions. Onions are great. 196. They're delicious. Nice and tender. Pardon?
Broccoli and cauliflower.
Broccoli and cauliflower. Okay. So you can cook green vegetables like broccoli, asparagus. Cauliflower, I do 185, but I check it because it gets tender really fast. Cruciferous vegetables in general, when you vacuum pack them and cook them sous vide, when you open up the vacuum bag, it's intense. It intensifies the flavor. I don't know if you want that if you're a cabbage. Like my broccoli, if I'm cooking it sous vide or if I'm cooking kale, sous vide is going in at 196 for like 5 minutes. Essentially, I'm basically blanching it in the bag. That's all I'm doing. So when you're blanching it, like boiling. So instead, I'm blanching it at a lower temperature. Is there a benefit? I think it stays greener, but I think it's a lot easier just to get a big pot of water boiling. Frozen broccoli, when you're pulling it out of that freezer bag, it's essentially sous vide. It's not, but it's basically, it's called cryo blanching. When you take a fresh vegetable, like broccoli, and you freeze it, you're essentially, and defrosting it, it's essentially going to have the texture of cooked broccoli, of a perfectly blanched broccoli. Every kosher chef always complains, oh, I hate kosher, I can't use fresh broccoli, At the end of the day, most chefs are taking broccoli and blanching it. But you get long stem broccoli from the freezer, you defrost it, it's like 80% there. So I'm happy with that. It's already great. Then I just saute it straight. I won't re-steam it, but I treat it like a piece of blanched broccoli. So sous vide, no reason for that. Yeah, any other vegetable questions?
If you looked up a recipe for whatever you want,
Yeah.
does it tell you how much water you need?
Okay, so how much water you need? You want to fill it up to the fill line, and that's all. Then it just circulates.
Okay, and you need to get this plastic thing.
This bin, you can use this, you can use a pot, you can use whatever you want. Anything that will hold the hot water. Now, what you don't want to do is get a pump like this for something twice the size. All right? This is made for the home. It's made for something like this. It's not made for a giant pot because the water will not circulate. And you're going to end up spoiling whatever you put in there. While we're talking about spoilage, one thing you never sous vide, just as a general rule, and everybody makes this mistake, is garlic. You never put garlic in a vacuum bag ever. Because garlic, when it's put into an anaerobic environment, that's an environment with reduced air, it's basically perfect for it to produce botulism spores. So in general, just don't sous vide garlic. A lot of people do, and your bag will blow up. It'll spoil within 2 days. Fresh garlic. Pardon? You're putting it into an anaerobic environment. So that's an environment with no oxygen. So botulism, which is what you're most afraid of when it comes to sous vide, is basically it's produced. Garlic is one of the vegetables that have it. A lot of it comes from the ground. So what happens is it needs an environment with low oxygen, that's wet, which is sous vide, perfect for that. And then you're essentially usually cooking in the danger zone. You're cooking at warm to severely hot temperatures. That's when bacteria loves to reproduce. You asked, so I answered. It's not so fun, but yeah, it is what it is. So you can see this right here. I mean, if I get this in a restaurant, I'm happy. I mean, it's a nice golden color. The texture is nice and firm. You can cut it into cool shapes and it will maintain its shape, make for a prettier plate, so on and so forth. Yes? Okay, I'll tell you what I never use. I'm going to get more into this than meat. I never use dried herbs when I'm sous videing anything. It's going to have a much more intense flavor. First of all, it's going to be cooking longer than you will normally cook anything, so the dried herbs have more time to hydrate, right? Number two, the flavors are exponentially more intense. If you've ever had a piece of dried thyme, it is inedible. It is disgusting. Dried basil is disgusting if you just put it in your mouth. But when you're cooking it in volume, it's delicious. It's wonderful. But when it's having direct contact, it's not great. Fresh herbs, if you're cooking something for under 4 hours, are fine. But you want to use less. I never do, because I don't need to. I can always add herbs in the form of an oil, herbs in the form of like a paste or pesto or whatever. But if you're cooking a steak, you want to throw one stick of thyme in there, great. It's delicious. No dry spices. Ever. Ever. We made that mistake here. We had to redo an entire production because it was just inedible. Now something like eggplant. The eggplant you had, the only thing that was on it was Ceylon tahina that you take off the shelf and pomegranate seeds. So what I like about sous vide is I do a lot of private dining here, which is basically the equivalent of what you're doing on Shabbos. I don't have time. I'm running production. So I will have a vacuum bag of a vegetable sitting in my fridge that's from the beginning of the week that's still perfectly fresh. All I need to do is take it, sear it off. I run to the dip section. I pull a tahina down. I pull a Ceylon from the shelf. I have a plated appetizer in 5 minutes, right? Instead of cooking from scratch, you have to cut the eggplant, cook the eggplant, so on and so forth. So you have that added efficiency. And this has been seared for a long time. I encourage you actually to all feel this. You're going to have a crust on the outside, but it's going to be custardy on the inside. So you have all the benefits of conventional cooking, but it's just a better texture all around. Now, on to protein. Okay. Which proteins do you want to cook sous vide? Which do you not want to cook sous vide? You can cook anything sous vide, but the first question you got to ask yourself is, why am I cooking it sous vide? Now, if you're looking to impress people, there's 5 cuts to cook. That's it, right? If you're looking for efficiency, that's a whole other story. Now, with kosher meat, what kosher meat's great sous vide? You have short ribs, boneless flanken, or bone-in. You have brick steak, which is cut from the French roast, which is chuck. And then you have rib steak and everything that makes up a rib steak. You have the rib eye, you have the crescent, right? And as far as French roast goes, almost any cut from the chuck is a beneficial cut to cook sous vide. Let's start with why sous vide is great for these 2 items. Short ribs. The most flavorful cut of beef there is on the entire cow. Not the strongest flavor, the most flavorful, okay? Now, short ribs are beautifully marbled, right? You have a lot of that intermuscular fat. That, when it's cooked, is warmed, it coats your palate, it feels good to bite into, and it's flavor. Fat is flavor, it carries flavor, right? Now, the problem with short rib is, if you cut off a piece of short rib, grill it, and bite into it, it's tough. It's from the chuck, it's worked. It's a tough cut. Now, conventionally, you take this, you put it into an oven at 300 degrees, you pull it out 3 hours later, it's going to be falling apart, right? Which is delicious. Now imagine being able to eat it medium rare, or medium. So when I cook my short ribs, we cook them at 140 for 48 hours, and you take it out and you'll be having it later. It eats like a steak, like a very tender steak. And it doesn't taste like it's boiled, it doesn't taste like it's overcooked. It's just like eating a perfect steak. That's how I look at it. Same thing with anything you're cooking sous vide. You can get any texture you want. You want it to be a conventional braise, like, pardon? Short ribs? Short ribs you can cook at 140 for 48 hours to 72 hours. Wonderful, not practical. Now, what's practical is 154 for 24 hours. I've cooked short ribs at every temperature imaginable. I go through a couple 100 pounds a week, which is all sous vide, right? We do it at 154. Since we're cooking it in a bag without ear, you cut into it, it's still red through and through. It looks like a piece of medium meat. But when you bite into it, it falls apart. That's what I like. If I want the texture of steak, I'm going to buy a rib steak. All right? If I want to show off, I'll cook it at 140 for 72 hours. The texture no one ever had before, and I feel special. But in reality, 154 is a texture you never had before also. It's like the perfect medium, like the perfect in-between. And that's the best way to cook short ribs in my opinion. Brick steak is the shortest time, you can 18 to 24 hours at 154. Anything shorter, you're going to have to go at higher temperatures. You might as well braise it. Brick steak, I prefer over short ribs because short ribs are very expensive. All right? In the non-kosher world, they're very cheap. They're considered a budget cut. We don't have as many cuts on our cows, right? So short ribs cost more per pound than any cut except for the surprise, which is on top of the rib. It is the most expensive cut of meat on the cow. Yes, it says $14 or $10 a pound. Take away that bone, it doubles it. Trim off the fat, it puts it up again another 20%, right? So it's not an everyday cut, unless you work here and you get to eat it in the back. But brick steak is between $9 to $15 a pound, okay? 100% yield, no trimming, nothing needed, right? And when you cook this on a grill like this, it's edible, it's okay, very chewy. I don't love chewy, okay? But when you cook it sous vide, it transforms it into something incredibly tender. Now, all my meats, everything, this is how I do it. You can do whatever you want, but what I do is I cook all my roasts, all my steaks, anything I'm serving for like a larger cut of meat at 135 degrees Fahrenheit. Specifically the brick steaks, 135 for 24 hours. You can do it between 18 to 24 hours, okay? What's going to happen is it's going to have a steak-like texture that's very tender instead of being very chewy. Now, there's many ways to cook a brick steak. One way to cook it is you can sear it first with salt and pepper, put it in your bag for 24 hours. It's going to have a nice roasted flavor when it comes out. Another thing that you can do is that I love to do with our brick steak, it's how we do our brick steak here. You're going to see the exact recipe. Is we do we call it a cure. We cure it with salt and sugar. Feel free to steal it. I've stolen it from many people before me. And what's great about this marinade, our cure, is that the sugar, you brush it off after cooking, right? When you're searing a piece of meat at home and you want to get it in a really nice crust, no matter how good your hood system is, that fire alarm, that smoke alarm's going off. Now, when you put sugar on the outside and you wipe off that sugar, it's going to turn charred in 10 seconds. So you're going to have a beautiful crust, but you don't have to cook it for 10 minutes over scorching high heat and have smoke alarms going off. Your smoke alarm might go off also, but at least it's only on for a minute instead of having to go on and off for 10 minutes. So for this recipe, the most important part is brown sugar. Doesn't matter how much you put. Cayenne, it's up to you. I put this much in the one in the store, more like this much, and it's a very slight heat to it. I'm going to regret not wearing a glove for that later, so. And I just mix it up. Now it's a slightly red tinted brown sugar. I use dark brown sugar. I don't use light because if I'm using brown sugar, I want it to have that molasses flavor. But you can use light brown sugar. You can use muscovado sugar. You can use any brown sugar. Granulated is, I find it difficult to work with, but yeah. As far as seasoning the meat, I season it like I normally would. And when you season meat, you want to season it generously. on all sides. I only use kosher salt. Do you have to use kosher salt? No. But I always season with kosher salt, so I know how much kosher salt to put. If you're using that standard table salt, you're going to want to put a lot less salt because they're much smaller crystals. So I use Diamond. If I switch to Morton, it's harder for me to season. My food's going to be saltier because I find it's like I use more of it. But that's not something you can teach. That's personal preference. So I have the meat here. I put the meat into the cure. I toss it around. I just get it nicely coated. And as you're coating it, you'll see the sugar will start to melt. And you're looking for like just a nice dark tint to it. Just take it just like this. As far as I'm concerned, that's good enough. You can leave it in your fridge overnight. Leaving it in your fridge overnight like that is going to make it a lot tastier because that sugar and the salt are going to start working on the meat, curing it a little bit. It'll make it a little more tender, but I just find it, the sugar really gets in there, and when you sear it, it has that like a more pronounced sweetness. Now, water displacement method. This we can get rid of. And by the way, butternut squash is still down there. That's good. Now, having a food saver makes it a lot easier. You just put it in the vacuum machine. Put it in. Get rid of this. Okay, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. You see that? You guys all see this? The meat is staying below the water, right? I can leave the bag over like this, or I can just close it. If you're cooking for 24 hours, I recommend double bagging it. But you don't have to. I've had Ziploc bags break on me, but very rarely. But you can just leave it like that. Or just spend $70 on a food saver. Or ask the butcher here to vacuum it for you. We do that here. We offer that as a service. So that's going to sit in there for 24 hours. And then it comes out. Chill it down right away. You can chill it down in an ice bath, which is ice and water. Put it into your fridge. But you want to get it cold as fast as possible. Once it's cold, you take it. Or, by the way, you can continue cooking it right out of the vacuum when it's warm, but you risk overcooking it. Okay? You always, when you're dealing with a piece of meat that you're going to sear, you must dry it off. Because moisture and hot oil don't go well together. This was cooked without the sugar, but you'll be able to see a lot by looking at it. We'll run through what meat looks like after it's sous vide. After it's sous vide, whether it's seared or not, it's going to look gray. Okay, this does not look appetizing. Okay? This looks like Pesach meat, boiled beef. Now, cut it in half. Please tell me they cooked this properly. Yeah, you see? Looks like corned beef. There's no salt on here either. It's just, this is how it looks. This looks like a medium cooked steak. 135 is medium, I think. Depends who you ask. But there you go. That's how I like my brick steak, right? When you're look, if you're doing a roast that's 2 pounds or you're doing this, 24 hours is a sure thing. When you're doing a whole rib roast versus the steak, a whole rib roast can take 10 hours at 135 degrees. But one steak will take an hour and a half. So there's a lot of charts online. You can start with the weights and the time. But in general, what you do is you start with the steak, you see how long it takes you to go. Then you do the 2-bone, and you kind of go from there. And you have to form that on your own. But I do rib roast, takes me a 7-bone rib roast, 14 hours at 135 degrees. Now, when I do steaks, I like my steak medium rare. I do it to 129. Anything I'm going to carve, anything, any roast, whether it's a rib roast or a lamb rack that I'm going to carve, I cook it to 135. When you take a piece of meat, a roast that's cooked to 129 degrees, and you take it out, it's floppy. This is firm, you see? It's not like loose and falling apart. If you've ever tried to carve a 129 rib roast, it's a mess. At 135, you have beautiful, clean slices, a nice firm texture, but it's still beautifully medium rare inside. It's still going to make everybody happy. But 129, like a whole roast, it's really messy. It's really hard to handle. 3-bone flanken is 154 24 hours. With the bone or without the bone, doesn't matter. No, you don't have to sear it at all. The reality is, I mean, you can put it in you can take sous vide short ribs, put it into a pan, put it on your broiler, you're good. You can put it in a 500-degree oven for 10 minutes, you can have beautiful color also. Okay, but is it going to be pink edge to edge? No, you're going to have a slight gradient. Is that a bad thing? I don't think so. I think that's great. You know, what I like about roasted meat is you have well done, medium well, rare, medium rare. I like that. But with sous vide, if you like rare, you like medium, you can have it perfect all the way around. So that's the benefit. Again, if you ask me, what do I prefer, a grilled steak or a sous vide steak? I'm going to take a grilled steak cooked by someone who knows what they're doing any day over a sous vide steak. Now, would I rather sous vide short ribs or conventionally braised short ribs? I'll rather sous vide short ribs because it's a really amazing texture, right? So whenever you're going to sous vide something, you have to ask yourself, why am I doing it? Am I looking to manipulate the texture? Great. Short ribs, way to go. Chuck eye, way to go. It's great. You're manipulating the texture. But a steak is delicious when you cook it properly. So sous videing it, if you're an obsessed perfectionist with a ton of time on your hands to compare all of them and then write blog articles, go for it. I encourage it, right? I really do. But you'll never see me eating a piece of sous vide steak. You won't. I don't like it. I need my meat to be imperfect, all right? I want that little well-done edge so that I enjoy that medium rare or rare inside. That's life. Life has bad and good. If it's just good, it's not as enjoyable. But then again, I'm a pretty messed up person, so I don't know that I'm the right guy to ask, but I stand pretty strongly by it. All the steaks I sell here are sous vide, by the way. They are. They're delicious. They really are. I'm not a meat eater. So if I'm going to eat meat, I want that char, I want that smoke, I want that grill flavor, I want it to be a little chewy and then a little tender. Like, I want that. But it's a personal preference. $12 hours. You'll need 2 of these. You'll need 2 of these machines and a bigger bath. Not conducive for home. 3-bone short rib is as big as you should go at home, realistically. This, like a 3-bone. Anything 3 bones is as big as you should go. 24 hours, 154. Okay, finishing it. Many ways to finish off a piece of meat. You have a deep fryer. A deep fryer is the best way to finish off a piece of sous vide meat. You're hitting it with high... What absorbs fat? Starch absorbs fat. If there's starch on a piece of meat, no. Protein does this. We're not going to get fattier if you're frying it. It won't. Now, what you're going to do is throw it in a super hot deep fryer. It comes out perfectly brown all over. It's delicious. How many of you have a deep fryer at home? How many of you have a deep fryer that can fit this at home and keep the temperature maintained? I applaud you. I really do. I'm jealous. You can use a blowtorch. Okay, blowtorch to brown a piece of meat like this properly is going to take about 7 minutes. It's a long time to be waving a blowtorch. It's also going to smell like gas. It's also going to taste like gas. Okay. Doesn't matter what gas you use. MAP gas, which is what people recommend, it still has that slight flavor, and it's not an even sear. It's not as delicious. Now, a hot pan or a grill, 2 minutes, just until you have color, it's going to be perfect. And if I'm searing it from cold, I'm not going to overcook that inside. I'm just going to get color on it, and I'm done, right? Now, short ribs, same thing. Salt, pepper, in a bag, 24 hours, it comes out looking like this. Now, what's special about short ribs, and I really do this at home. I always have one of these in my fridge. If I'm having friends over or guests over, I want to be able to serve them a piece of meat. I'm a chef. I'm not allowed to serve them what I eat. I actually have to pretend to know what I'm doing, right? This for me always looks good. It always makes me look good. A little more time, but it's getting there.
What do you eat?
I eat grilled cheese sandwiches, pizza, and anything that comes in a delivery box. Every night. As a matter of fact, I got onto this really big nacho cheese kick lately. I sous vide my nacho cheese sauce these days, by the way. I do it in a bag. But throw in some barbecue sauce or whatever fancy glaze I have. Throw it in a hot oven. Beautiful glazed short ribs. I want to do like a fancy breakfast. I want to do a beef hash. I'll dice it up. Sear it off with some roasted potatoes. I have hash. Look at that color, by the way. You guys see that? Right? It looks like a beautifully seared steak. Look at the inside. Still red. Again, it's like that's what's great about this is I can have one piece of protein. If you're only 4 people at home, right? You can have 5 different dishes out of this piece of meat. It's all about how many sauces do you keep in your cabinet, you know? I take the frozen shredded potatoes, I sear this off. I put the frozen shredded potatoes with it. I crack some eggs on top, and like I look really amazing. I take frozen latkes, I bake them off, fry them off, whatever, and I throw some short ribs on top. I have short rib latkes. So whenever I'm cooking sous vide, I keep it as neutral as possible. You could take this, throw it into a smoker for 2 hours, and you have smoked short ribs. So you don't have to watch all night. That's pretty cool, right? And short ribs that you're going to taste, but you know what? Who is there? Forks? Pardon? Baby back ribs? Okay, so like, here's the problem. So like, I answer everything honestly, so even though we sell baby back ribs is like the backbone of a rib roast. It's got gristle and hardly any meat on it. So there's no real benefit. Like, I wouldn't do it. Like, baby back ribs come from pork. That's where baby back ribs come from. Now, if I was going to do, wanted that like amazing ribbiness and I want it to be porky, I'm going veal breast. I'm going short ribs if I want ribs. But I never sous vide baby back ribs. You can, 154 for like 18 hours, but you're going to put in a lot of effort onto the meat. So, now, bone out what? Hold on, I vacuum seal without a bone? Yeah, it's not a vacuum seal if the bone's sticking out. If you're vacuuming with a bone at home, I don't recommend it unless you're double bagging. Or you wrap it with aluminum foil. What I do here is we have something called bone guard. You just wrap it. I work in a commercial kitchen. You wrap it and vac it, and you're good to go. It's pretty magical. Yeah. Because when you grill a steak for 45 minutes or an hour, if I'm using like the indirect, direct method, right? Watch that watch that steak, not even with a microscope, it's getting smaller. Take a sous vide piece of meat, you have 10% loss. You're losing 10%. A grilled steak, 20, 25%. I prefer it. You still get that char, but it's not as intense. It's not as roasted. That char is not going through and through that meat. That's slowly over the coals, over the wood. It's penetrating it. It's a lot more flavorful. Is it as texturally perfect? No. But then again, I'm not looking for. I'm going to pass this around on a plate with forks. I encourage you to try it. It's very little, it's hardly seasoned also. But this way you can actually see the texture of 154. If you braise this, you would never be able to get a piece that looks like that. Right? Yes. Okay. Okay. What temperature? Okay. So if you're putting a piece of meat in at 135, okay, once it hits 135, an hour later it's pasteurized. Pre-searing it's not doing anything. Pre-searing it's going to kill external bacteria. I'm going to really complicate things right now. So basically, with some meat manufacturers or some butchers, you have something called lactic acid bacteria. When you cook something over direct heat that has lactic acid bacteria, it's not harmful. When you cook it over direct heat, you don't taste it. When you cook it at a low temperature like sous vide, it's going to smell like cheese and taste like cheese. It's not bad for you. Not everybody notices it. After you sear it, you're still going to have it's still there. Once you taste it, you can never untaste it. You will know instantly. I've dealt with it for many years, not here, when I was in California. Our short ribs were from an amazing producer, local producer, really delicious short ribs. You sous vide them, it tasted like cheddar cheese. But it is what it is. So we just bought short ribs from somewhere else and we didn't have that issue. But yeah. Veal. Do you like medium rare veal? Like veal chop? How do you like your veal chop? I like my veal chop 135 actually. I like it. That's medium rare. I like my veal chop like that. Veal breast, very complicated. Veal breast is a whole other class, like a whole class in its own. 135, just till it's done, 2 hours. Pardon? Veal breast is a class in its own. It's very complicated. The most difficult cut to sous vide, in my opinion, because it's made of 2 muscles. When you're looking at something like, we're talking about veal, so now we got to the subject. Surprise steak, right? You cook a surprise steak at 130 to medium rare, it's going to be delicious, right? It really will, okay? But if you cook it at 135 for 10 hours, since it's a tougher cut, it's going to be even more amazing. So that's like a transformative cut. But yeah, question? It's warm. It's room temp. It's warmish. Okay, so anytime I reheat or retherm, I'm doing it over direct heat or in a really hot oven, just to give it color. Oh, man. This is completely hot in the middle right now. I'm touching it, and it's still perfectly cooked. Pardon?
Is there anything on the meat or the...
Only thing on the meat, salt and pepper. Buttered squash has vinegar, maple syrup, and walnut oil. Yossi, can you pass this meat around? They can... Yeah. Anyways. That's a piece of short rib. Nothing on it but salt and pepper. Pardon? Yep, same thing, but this, you should taste it before it's seared. You'll notice it's a lot beefier. It's a very intense beefy flavor. Once you sear it, this is actually fried in a deep fryer, by the way. You wouldn't know it if I didn't tell you. You would think it could be a hot oven, it could be a saute pan, so on and so forth. Now, any questions about beef? You can ask, I'll just rattle off the answers. Yes? Yeah, so temperature it's perceptive, right? It's a perception, it's a sense. You know, you're sensing it, right? So if you like something really hot, right? And I like my steak hot. I like a medium rare steak to feel hot. You want to eat it, you know, what you do is you put it into a stupid hot oven, or a super hot oven, more appropriate, for a few minutes. That outside is going to be so hot, when you cut into it and you bite into it, you're going to have that perception of heat. Even though the inside's not hot, you're going to have that perception that's really hot. But then again, the downside to sous vide cooking is, particularly when you're going directly from a bag to a plate, by the time it comes out of the bag and hits the plate, it's going to be warm to cold, right? That being said, throw it into a really hot oven first. It's going to be hot on the outside. It will gradually warm to the middle. It will warm through, gradually. Really high heat, yes. It'll still be hot in the middle. But I can cook a medium rare steak on a stovetop and do the same thing. It's all about Really high heat, letting it rest for a few minutes so that heat kind of transfers, and then serving it. Same exact meat, just the outside is going to have texture. Same exact thing. Correct. They're not compromising anything. Now, my favorite thing to sous vide, without question, is chicken. I eat chicken. I don't eat meat. I eat chicken, dairy, and fish. At the what? So, white meat chicken between 141 and 144, about an hour per breast. Hour and a half if you want to be safe. 141 to 144. Dark meat chicken, chicken thigh, boneless, 154 for about an hour and a half. But then again, I have an email. You can email me all your questions. I answer within 48 hours. But I don't answer what ifs. So like if you're like, I want to cook chicken thigh, bone in, I'll tell you how long to cook it for and at what, like for what texture. If you start asking me about crazy sauces and glazes, you're getting ignored. I'm sorry. Because I don't cook like that. Everything that I cook here is salt and pepper. That's it. Salt and pepper. 99% of the things I sell here, even the fancy prime food, it's basically salt and pepper. When I cook the protein, then I'll say, what glaze do I want? Do I want it to be Asian? I'll make an Asian glaze. Do I want it to be honey mustard? I'll glaze it with a sauce. I'm not going to cook it with a sauce because I don't know if my menu will change week to week. Yeah. We're gonna finish off the class with that. Okay, we still have time, which is good. Okay. Now, chicken breast. Okay. When you cook it at 141 for an hour and a half, it's not going to be dry. Okay. If you cook it for 3 hours, it's going to be weird. It gets like a weird dryness to it, even though it's not dry. I cannot explain it without you experiencing it. It's going to feel mushy but dry at the same time. Same thing with fillet, like rib roast, right? Rib steak. If you put a rib steak, a single steak in there for 20 hours, is it safe to eat? 100%. Is it going to have the weirdest texture you ever had? Absolutely. I can't explain it. If you try it, I should have made one. But anyways, now, sous vide chicken. Last time I'm using this cutting board. It's not the last time I'm using this cutting board. So, depends on the size of the steak. So this is an example of where, honestly, I'm going to tell you, I cook a 2-inch rib steak, 130 degrees, it's done in 2 hours. But that being said, you have a bigger steak or smaller steak, it comes with experience. Or Google. There are charts. You Google Baldwin. He's one of the first people to do like sous vide home chef. Baldwin, Douglas Baldwin, I believe. And he created a guide that's accepted by the USDA where you measure your protein. But I'm not measuring my protein. I don't think you're measuring your protein either. You can't go by weight alone because weight doesn't tell you how thick it is. You know, you can have something that's 10 pounds this long and 10 pounds this like this. And this is going to take a lot longer to cook than this because it's about surface area. When it's this big, more surface in contact with the heat. This big, less surface. Chicken, okay? I always season my chicken before sous videing because I'm not cooking it for a long amount of time. And like I said, everything I cook is just salt and pepper. Now, if you're cooking it for I have like chicken breast with like coconut curry powder on it. I have chicken breast that's in General Tso sauce. I have chicken breast that's in, well, it's really chicken thigh, I don't eat chicken breast, but you'll see like all sitting in bags, and I have my meals for the week ready to go. Not that I'm eating it, I'm getting takeout, but if people come over, I pull it out of the freezer, okay? I just put it on there, a little bit of oil. Pardon? Coconut curry? I've never had it, so I don't know. It could be amazing, it could be horrible. It's probably amazing, though. It's usually amazing. Now, take this. You should theoretically have your bag ready to go so you don't get it all chickened up. I put it in. We're going to pretend this is at 140. Okay? Same method. Okay? I'm actually, it's really cool. You should try this. When you put your finger in there, you feel the air closing around it. And it's just going to hang out there for an hour. Now, when I pull it out of the bag, it's going to look kind of ugly. Hold on. $141. Sorry. I do it. You could do it at 140, but I'm paranoid about 140. So I do it at 141, even though it's perfectly safe. Yes. Okay. If I'm doing a breast single layer, I'm not adjusting it. I have the same contact with the surface contact. If I'm double stacking, you're probably gonna have to double your time, and I don't recommend it because the longer you're cooking that poultry for, the more dangerous it gets. I mean, it's like, yes, is this pretty accurate? It is pretty accurate, but does the power go off? Does it dip in temperature on the top surface because it's cold outside? It does. So like, I always try to keep things like chicken thin. I never sous vide fish. You can. Putting fish into an environment with no oxygen, you're straight up going to kill somebody. Now, storing fish in a vacuum bag, not designed for fish, it's for fish that have tiny little holes that don't allow water in. But if you're going to sous vide, cleaning it beforehand, okay, in like a salt solution, it's safer. It's still not safe if you don't know what you're doing. So like for a whole, I really don't recommend it. Also, when you're sous videing fish, you're getting a weird texture, which every fancy chef has convinced themselves is good. It's not. All right, it's not. It's slimy. It's weird. All right. If I'm cooking fish sous vide, I'm essentially doing it at the same temperature as I'd poach it for. But it's like a famous. If you Google sous vide salmon, most people do it at 104 degrees. Right. It's pasteurized. You know, it's safe to eat. But it has a weird texture, which you have to convince yourself is good. When I'm cooking, I like to cook things that I don't have to convince people make sense. The texture of the sous vide short ribs, that was pretty cool, right? That was tasty. You don't have to convince yourself to like it. That's what I value. Now, we're going to talk about this in a minute. Oh yeah, when the chicken comes out, this is not attractive, right? Even with the skin on, it does not look good, right? I wouldn't want to, like, this doesn't look like something I want to eat. Even after searing, it does not look uniform, right? Now, if I want to be super fancy, and I'm doing a high-end event, take plastic wrap. Can you guys see this? Is it visible? Yeah? Oh, it is. Okay. Fold it over like this, okay? Gloves. Yes. Yeah, totally. And then when you reheat it, you can reheat it however you want. I take the chicken, I put it down like this, right? I take this. I want to make sure you guys can see this. You see how I fold it over after the protein, okay? I tighten it, okay? You can do this with steak also, like a rib fillet. You want to give it a more round look. Okay? Then I twist one side towards me, okay? The other side opposite. You see a lot of people doing this, and the way you know if they know what they're doing is when you're doing it in opposite directions, you're going to get something nice and even. You do it in the same direction, it's going to look lopsided. That looks pretty cool, right? Looks like a chicken sausage. You'll see it online where you can use butcher string to tie off the ends. It's not so easy if you've never done it. So I just do another layer of plastic wrap that keeps it nice and close. In the kitchen we use butcher string. Anyways, goes like this, okay? Into the vacuum bag, into the water bath, okay? And it's going to maintain this shape, especially if you chill it and then reheat it. It's really cool for catering or for parties when you want to have that perfect round portion, which you see in a lot of pictures. That's how you do it, okay? Everyone understand it? Or do you guys want to see it again? Again? Okay. You can do thin slice too, yes. But the reality is, if you're giving it color after, it's going to have cook the same amount of time as cooking it. It's not beneficial. All our chicken is, by the way. All our cutlets here are. We sous vide them. We cook them like this in a bath. Now, almost all. Oh, sorry. Double layer of plastic wrap. You want the plastic wrap to still be connected to it, okay? Fold it over, squeeze it in, and you roll. One way, other way. There you go. Okay? Everyone got that? You could do it with a fillet, you could do it with any protein. Yes? No, same temperature, just longer, it's thicker. Yeah. Yeah, what I really like to do with this is I'll take it, freeze it, bread it, and then fry it. It's really cool. It's like a perfect tuba schnitzel. I like it a lot. Also, what's really cool is you could put a stuffing in the center and roll it, and it'll stay set. Better if you freeze it, though. Better if you freeze it. Because when you freeze it, it's just like when you fry it frozen and then reheat it, it's going to stay. You don't have to worry about the seam opening. It's still frozen but fully cooked. Then you can warm it in an oven. Now, you can stuff it, then put it in the bag. But that being said, what are you stuffing it with? Are you stuffing it with something that's temperature sensitive? Like, are you stuffing it with ground chicken? I'm not cooking ground chicken at 135 degrees. That's fine. As long as there's no raw garlic. If it's cooked garlic, you're fine. Now, let's look at what sous vide chicken looks like. The sous vide chicken you're going to be trying is pink. It's a light shade of pink. It's fully cooked. It's perfectly safe to eat. It's not raw pink. It's just like a pink color to it. If you look closely at this, there's also, first of all, if you smell it, okay, the smell of sous vide chicken smells like chicken, okay? When you eat like chicken nowadays, like especially the chicken that, whatever, I can't talk about it. But basically, if you eat the chicken that we eat today, it's not very chickeny. It's not flavorful. It tastes kind of like bland. Sous vide, it's going to intensify the chicken flavor. I love it. Most people don't because you're not used to it. So if you have like a farm raised, all chickens technically farm raised, but well, factories, but they're farms. But if you go like a small farm, like a free range chicken, it's going to taste more chickeny than a factory farm chicken, right? So it's running around, it's more worked. Look at the middle of this. You can see that how it's like that's juicy through and through. This was reheated, by the way. This was cooked beforehand and put back in a bath. It's got a slight, very slight pink color to it. You can eat it just like this, okay? Now, all right, that looks juicy, okay? You're going to be eating it cold. So cold, it's like it seems a little dry, but it's all about how you perceive it, I guess. But what's cool about this is, I know it's kind of gross to watch, but it's important to understand this. When you apply force, just like with a vegetable, it will break apart, and you can make a salad out of it, okay? And if you feel it, it's incredibly juicy. Like when I'm having a new cook and I'm teaching about sous vide, they're doing this to folks. Like they have to do this. They have to understand what it should feel like. Now, if I was making a chicken salad, It's fully cooked, but you see how I can literally break it into these strands, but it's still completely juicy. Now, if I'm eating chicken, another thing you can do is when you put it in the pan, and the same thing for vegetables or meat, you can glaze it in the pan. And one glaze that I like, which is really easy, is thick balsamic. So what I try to show people all the time here, and nobody believes me, everything we do is simple. It's all a joke. Not a joke, but it's just really easy. Between aisle 9 and then 1, 2, and 3, and 4, I could put together a 20-course dinner. No one's going to know it came out of a supermarket. Nobody. Fig balsamic. You take any fig jam, you put it into a bowl, balsamic vinegar, embarrassing, hold on. Fig jam, yeah. I start by adding a drop to it. This is how we make it in the back. We mix it up. Nope. Not sour enough. I keep adding until it is the way I want it to be. What you just ate is basically a Cobb salad. It's a piece of sous vide chicken breast on top of avocado dip, which you take off our shelf, on top of romaine, which is checked, you take it from our shelf. On top of that, you have an egg yolk jam, which is complicated. Really simple, but I don't want to go into it because there's a lot of explaining that has to go on there. That we can't sell. We're not allowed to. There is a candied veal bacon marmalade and a tomato and kosher salt. It's a Cobb salad without blue cheese. Straight out, no color, nothing. Nothing. And it was cold, right? It wasn't like eating a dry piece of chicken. But I also put a ton of fattening ingredients on it. So even if it was dry, you really wouldn't know, but it wasn't dry. Now, right now, in a matter of 2 minutes, I have thick balsamic glaze. I can call it chutney because it's chunky. I can throw it in the blender and I have glaze. So thick balsamic glaze, I have a 3-letter fancy word for a menu with 2 items you pull off the grocery shelf, right? For thick balsamic glazed chicken, oh, I didn't mean to do that, but it doesn't matter. I take the chicken, I put it into a hot pan, I pour some glaze on top, preferably a metal spoon, but I didn't think I'd be doing this. And I just cook it as the glaze reduces, and then I have a fancy protein. That's pretty much how we, so like what I'm known for is doing these videos every Thursday with these fancy looking food. It's all really simple stuff that like, with a few tricks, it just looks amazing. It's like you take a piece of chicken and you take a jam from the shelf. Instead of doing what you normally do, you take the jam, you put it on the chicken and you bake it, and the jam dries out, the chicken dries out, it gets burnt, it gets this. Instead, you cook your chicken fully, you have your glaze ready to go, you heat the glaze, and you just glaze it in the pan and reheat that chicken with that glaze. It needs more glaze. You can do this with apricot jam. What would I do with apricot jam? I would just add some ginger powder to it, and I have an apricot ginger preserve or apricot ginger glaze. You can do cherry balsamic. You can do, I mean, it's really endless. Because when I was working in restaurants in my own company, California, we were hipsters, so we did everything from scratch, using locally available ingredients, right? But then I go to Al 9, you have Bon Maman, who's been making jams for 100 years. I am not making it better than they are, okay? and they have better buying power. It's cheaper for me to buy the pre-made jam, right? So will I still make my own jams at home? And even here, yes, because I want to feel cool. Like, I like it. Makes me feel like, farm to table, all that. Makes me feel like I'm on trend. But in reality, is it better? Not necessarily. I didn't have it up hot enough. But you can see, like, it's reducing down. It gets thicker, right? Most of them. A few of them aren't because of garlic, but that's a recent thing. You don't want it to burn either. When I'm glazing something, I try not to glaze it on the actual plate. If I want to garnish it, I'll garnish the plate with how I want to garnish it. But if I'm saucing it on the plate, I don't have a guarantee that that plate's going to be beautiful and white because I don't know where that's going to splatter, right? So I'll take it off this. I'll put it there. See? Nice and clean, right? Ideally, this is a metal tray, pretend. And then I could just put it on top a little bit. I could put it off to the side if I want, And right here, you basically just saw me cook this from scratch, right? Balsamic baked chicken. It's delicious, by the way. Any questions? Capons, I do 154. Takes about 2 hours. Sorry. You say capon boneless dark meat chicken? Okay, that was Cornish hen, I just said. Boneless dark meat chicken, 154, takes about 90 minutes. Cornish hen, 154, about 2 hours. But it depends if the bones are on, bones are off. It's not easy to do at home, so you need a good vacuum machine, otherwise it's going to float because of the cavity. But if you're doing a half Cornish hen, 154, about an hour and a half, is really nice. Let's see. I just want to make sure I didn't miss anything. You can sous vide fruit. I sous vide fruit. I have to watch it because it goes fast. 185. I wouldn't do 196, but you can go lower also. But that you can Google. Like I'll sous vide pears. We sous vide pears all the time. Yeah, raw pears, pickled pear. Okay, so let's just do a quick run through of everything, because I know with a lot to cover. Packaging. You have the Ziploc bag method, right? These are really cool. Use freezer bags. Don't use the storage bags. You also have food saver vacuum sealers. Wonderful. You also have these things called chamber vacuum sealers, minimally $700, right? So I wouldn't go there. Cook time we discussed. Pre-treatment. You can sear before, you can sear after. You can cure it with salt and sugar and nitrates if you want to get technical about it. You can brine it. You can buy the corned beef on the shelf, put it in your sous vide bath at 154 for 24 hours. It's going to be amazing, right? It's pickled already, so it's going to be really juicy. Have that wonderful corned beef flavor. You don't have to worry about it being dry, okay? The pickled French roast. Our second cut brisket. 154, 24 hours, usually good. Usually 24 hours covers it, whether it's a 1 pound roast or a 12, 15 pound roast. Usually. Corned beef roast. I would throw honey mustard in there, shove it in a hot oven until it's done. You watch it. You have to watch it. You have to 10 minutes at 550. It's probably good enough. Pardon? Yes, those vacuum bags are cook safe. Absolutely same bags we use here, the sous vide, up until 190 degrees. Then it starts to get soft and blows up a little bit. Yeah, exactly. But maybe you're feeling adventurous. You want to go a little hotter. Yes. Pardon? I'm not allowed to answer questions like that. But theoretically, okay, since it's cooked in a bag, it's Pesach thick. You can use a circulator year-round? Is that what you're asking? Okay, one, you cannot. Okay? You could totally kosher a circulator. You can. Ask your local Orthodox rabbi about it. Okay, I don't want to go into details, but I have a very strict hashgacha. We're allowed to. You can kosher an immersion circulator. Part one. Part two. You cannot use it. I mean, I don't know who asked what rabbi. You cannot use it for meat and dairy because it leaches. Bags, yes. Is it 99.9% oxygen-free? Yes. But you take a smoked piece of meat, right? Smoke is a flavor that diffuses through everything. You put smoke in here, the outside's becoming brown, and then it's going to go on to everything else. You're going to smell it. It's on a molecular level, on a chemical level, and for sure not. But then again, it depends who you ask. Yeah, double bagging doesn't work either because when you're double bagging, it's just going to go through 2 layers of plastic. I tried this. I tried every loophole already. They shut me down. But yeah. Any other questions? Yes. Why? Like, okay, because I see online the perfect burger. Okay. Hypothetically, if I ate non-kosher, you have Burger King, right? How many burgers does Burger King make a year? Billions, right? Millions, probably. Actually, I don't know. Who knows? They make a lot of burgers. Okay. Is it a good burger? Probably not. Is it a consistent burger? Yes, right? Now, you go to your local burger shop, right? How many of you have like a good burger at your local burger place? You know, even better. How many of you make regular burgers at home? And you think you have the best burger in the world? Most guys do. All right? Now, you're going to sous vide it. Why? You're trying to keep it perfect, medium rare, inside and out. Like, so I'm going to get the water bath out. I'm going to shake my meat. I'm going to put it into a bag. Cook it, which is safe, by the way, at the right temperatures, assuming you're grinding it fresh or buying it from a reputable butcher, right? And you know the percentage that's in it. You're grinding it fresh. You're putting it in a bag, right? That's you're first to shape it. Like a special way to shape it. Then you're putting it into a vacuum bag to cook it. You're taking it out, chilling it, getting out a hot pan or grill to grill it. All right. Like I would rather watch TV and eat my burger in 10 minutes than do it in 2 hours, because again, I will go up against anyone. Your sous vide burger was the regular burger. Blind test, no one's gonna know the difference. Okay, they will not know the difference. I don't care what they say. They're making it up to feel better about themselves. All right. Sous vide steak, yes, there's a difference if you're like a real expert. But burgers, it's ground meat. All right, that's how I feel. I try to stay away from aluminum, but you can use any pot in your kitchen. Anything that'll hold hot water you can use. But you want to have in mind, you don't want to put this into a pot that's this big. That bottom's not going to get anything. You're going for approximately this size. Okay, too high is no good. Bottom won't get hot enough. This is the right size. Yes. About this 9 by 13. Not bad. Not bad. 9 by 13 pan, similar size. Similar. Yeah. Pulled brisket sous vide? Okay. So I get hundreds of these questions, hundreds. There's a correct answer to all of them. I cook brisket sous vide. I'm doing brisket at 155 degrees for 24 hours. I do that for second cut only. I do not sous vide first cut brisket. Why? Personal preference. Yeah, but you can do whatever you want at home. You can try it. Some people have success. I don't, and I've tried many times. That being said, if I'm doing something to pull it apart, what do I gain from doing it sous vide? That's the question I always ask myself. Now, if I'm doing it sous vide to pull it apart, and by cooking it sous vide, it's going to have like the collagen will be just melted, and it's going to be like creamier and juicier, even when I pull it. Yes, you can do it 185 for 5 hours, 4 hours. It's going to be great. But then again, you can also take that brisket, throw it into barbecue sauce in a pot, and pull it when it's tender. There's a very subtle difference. It's not worth it. What I do like to do is make pulled beef and then vacuum pack it and freeze it. That's really good, But cooking it sous vide, you can. But why? That's what you have to ask yourself. It is better in ways, but generally, it's not worth it. Yes. Okay, duck sous vide. I've cooked. Okay, I'm going to tell you how I do duck sous vide. So you can ask whatever question you want. I'm going to answer you. So duck sous vide. I do duck at 100. I take a whole duck, 154 degrees for 4 to 5 hours. Okay? Half duck boneless, 154, 4 hours. Boneless duck breast, 132 for 90 minutes. Okay? I find it works for me. I use Pella duck. Use Marva duck, you're going to have a different result. Like, unfortunately, it's how it is with duck. But Once you crisp that skin, it'll be crispy for 5-10 minutes. That's it. At 132, it's not drying out. No. For kosher duck, yes. Like for the conventional duck you're getting, yeah. Yes.
How big of a bird?
I wouldn't. You can sous vide a whole chicken, but you're gonna have to go like. The problem with large birds, even turkey, it needs a large amount of time. It needs a lot of time to pasteurize. A whole turkey, it takes a lot of time to pasteurize. And again, a turkey breast you do 143. It takes about 3 hours. Now, a whole turkey, roasting a whole bird in general. Okay, so like this is really important to understand. Chicken, white meat, great at one temperature. Dark meat needs a longer time at another temperature in order to be tasty. You're cooking a whole bird, you're making sacrifices. Either you're not going to have the perfect breast, you're not going to have the perfect leg, but you'll have a nice product all around. But then again, it's not ideal to cook a whole bird because you're going to be making compromises. Pardon? Now, that's true no matter how to cook it, unless you're cooking a 4-pound chicken at 450 degrees, preheat the oven for an hour, you put it in for exactly 45 minutes, then you take it out, you let it rest for 20 minutes, and it's perfect every time. But then again, that's just one type of bird that I'm able to pull off. Whole turkey, we do it here. I mean, we have a special oven that the temperatures change every hour and a half, and then it rests, and it goes back in. It's like a whole process. Our turkey's pretty good. But in general, if you're doing a whole turkey, it's just not worth it. It's really not to deep fry it. Once you're going through that effort, to throw it in a fryer. Eggs. Okay. Eggs you got to Google. Egg sous vide is like the first thing every home cook sous vides. I don't show it to people because I'm not going to convince myself that a semi-raw, gooey egg white is delicious. It's not. What is delicious is an egg yolk cooked sous vide. It's super custardy, right? So write it down, 165 for 16 minutes. A sous vide egg yolk. All right, it's like fudgy. I love it. But sous vide whole egg, what I do with that, when I sous vide eggs for a party, I boil them for 1 minute and then I put them into a circulator, depending on the temperature. But it's the most Googleable sous vide recipe there is. But it's very, like, you're particular. I mean, in my experience, most people, at least customers here, that grew up a certain way are not fans of runny yolk. Like, they're not. My mom ain't eating no runny yolk, that's for sure. All right, and my grandmother's probably never seen a runny yolk. Okay, but me, I love loose eggs. I love it rare. Like I call it medium rare. I love it. I like my eggs barely warm. All right, they know exactly how to cook it. It's a whole process. You get trained on that when you start cooking. But well, I like it warm and hot. The egg yolks that you guys ate was cooked at 165 for 16 minutes, chilled, blended with canola oil and seasoning. But in general, I mean, I love it at 165. I just eat the yolk because the white is. I'm not a fan. But that's me. Just me. Yeah. For it's a very good question. Okay. So when you're sous videing a rack of lamb, okay, is it better to portion it into smaller pieces when you're sous videing it? Because then when you're searing it, okay, you're getting more crust, more flavor on more surface area than with a large one, right? Now, this is how I look at it. The opinion of one person, yes, we cook a few 100,000 of them a year sous vide. So we have a little experience, but then again, everyone's particular. When you're cutting something and then sous videing it and then you're grilling it, it's a thin piece. The chances of you overcooking it are very high. So if you're doing a lamb chop, I wouldn't sous vide it. I would just go straight to a grill. Now, a whole rack, you sous vide it, and if you sear it in a pan and you're basting it with like an herb oil, it's going to be delicious. It's going to be fabulous. It's not, but you're talking about a little more flavorful, a little less flavorful, completely relative. Yeah. Anyone else? Oh, sorry, any herb oil. Just take like you know, when you're searing it, canola oil, put a sprig of rosemary in there, and just spoon that hot oil over it. It's going to be tasty. I never, ever, ever, ever sear with olive oil. First of all, when you're searing it, you're breaking it down. It becomes a lot less healthy for you. And the flavor, it oxidizes, and it smells. I personally can't eat heated olive oil. I can't handle it. Unless it's a really extra light one. But grapeseed is, you know, what's gone. They did a good job cleaning up. It's perfect. It's a great alternative. Yes? I used to leave my rack of lamb at 135 for about 5 hours. I do it for a longer amount of time than it needs because I find lamb to be tough. The longer the cooking, it starts to tenderize it and break it down. Okay, so it's just important to understand this. A steak cooked at 135 for an hour and a half is going to be delicious. You take it, cook it a little longer, it's going to get a little more tender. But there's a gray area. We've got 18 more minutes of questions. Yes? Okay. You can sous vide tuna. You can sous vide anything. But it requires a great amount of diligence when it comes to the temperatures you're maintaining. Because if it's vacuumed or if it's kept in oil and it's at a bad temperature, you're going to have toxicity that is existing in many fish. So it's just not something people recommend. But if you're going to do it, you want to season it first. So if you Google sous vide tuna, and it's coming from a reputable source, it's usually salted first. Usually. But at the same time, sous vide tuna, in my experience, tastes like canned tuna. Sous vide salmon is different, but tuna in general, it's weird. It's like I used to have one sitting in the back going for like a year and a half. We just keep adding water to it. Oh, I'm not getting involved in that, but the reality is it is. It is. It's completely safe. It's completely safe. As long as you're not like sticking like a metal, like as long as you're responsible. Like, you know. I cover it with plastic wrap, and it's usually fine. In the morning, I come and add some more water. No, they're horrible. They're just expensive. They're hard to like. It's a waste of time. Plastic wrap. Been doing plastic wrap for probably 14 years. Never. The water level never got too low ever. Yes. Yeah, you can. It is. It's great. Those custom lids are great. But those custom lids also have little holes which I cover with plastic wrap. I'm neurotic. London broil. What's London broil? Which butcher do you shop at? What's the London broil today? What's the London broil of the week? All right, I get asked every day, how do I cook London broil? I have no idea. I don't know. What is London broil? Now, shoulder London broil, but where on the shoulder is it from? Is it the shoulder? Does it also have the, you know, that tendon going through? Okay, so this is how you approach London broil. Okay, doesn't matter where it's from. You start off with how do you normally cook your London broil? Usually you like it medium rare? But pre-sous vide. Okay. So you have something like a flat iron or a minute steak, 135, 12 hours. It's great, right? Shoulder, even sous vide at 130, 135. It doesn't matter how long. Even though it looks red and it cuts and it's tender, it tastes dry to me. Because shoulder, it's just not enough fat, in my experience. So I don't cook it sous vide. That's why when I say when you're approaching sous vide, where's your like best like wow factor? Chicken, short ribs, break steak, you know? Yes. Say that again? 135 for 5 hours, assuming it's a French rack. You can go up to 12 or 18 hours. A 550 preheated for 45 minutes, then I blast it in there, and it gets nice color. No, for like 5 minutes. I preheat it. Yes, I'm back. Bone and chicken breast, same thing. 141, just add 15 minutes. Yes. Brick roast, 135 for medium rare. A little more, 138. I wouldn't go higher than that. 24 hours, but I wouldn't go higher. Like, because then you're going into temperatures where you're not benefiting. So if you like it medium, go for it. Cook it at 154 for 12 hours. It's just not, it's going to be it's going to have conventional texture. But it's great for efficiency. I would start with 138 for like 18 hours. Yes. Minute roast, you have is 135, like 18 hours, but I don't like it. I don't like the tendon down the middle. You're having it split? Set the flat iron. 135, 12 hours is good. 135 for 3 hours is good. 135 for an hour and a half is good. It's a great cut. It's tender. So it's one of those tender cuts on the cow. So, or just on a grill for 2 minutes on each side, it's great also. That's a reality. But it's great sous vide. I do it 135, 12 hours. I find it to be really delicious. Anyone else? Any other questions? Wait. Oh. I don't like sous vide frozen. If I'm in a rush and I want to throw it in, it's fine. Because in a 135 bath for a thin cut of meat, it'll take 20 minutes to defrost. When it's vacuum frozen, I don't know how tight that vacuum is. When it defrosts and like the water melts, it sometimes floats. I'm uncomfortable with it, but it works.
You're going to put something on Sunday for shots. You put it after you put it on Sunday, you put it in the freezer, or you leave it in the fridge until you finish.
Whatever makes you feel more comfortable. With my vacuum machine, I leave it in the fridge because it's a good vacuum machine. In a Ziploc bag, I'd freeze it. They make commercial models that are bigger, that are made for larger. Yes, but this machine is made for this size. Don't go bigger. Yes, you can go bigger. It's just a little. It's like you're taking a risk. If you go bigger with a machine like this, theoretically, is it going to work? Yes, but should you? No. In back. Ask your local Orthodox rabbi. I mean, like, come on, man. By the way, and most local Orthodox rabbis say you can't take it out, and they happen to be wrong. Because when you're taking it out of the water bath, it starts fluctuating in temperature. So I'm not going there. I'm not going there. 135, 24 hours. Yeah, by the way, you can email me. I will email you back, eventually. Yes, so this right here, you just put a clip on the side and it stays put. Okay, so if I'm cooking 10 things at 135, right, I can put 10 things in here. But if I'm cooking something at 135 and 154, I need 2 bags. I would single bag it. I would just I would clip them to the side. No, same amount of time. As long as it's the same surface area in contact with the water, you're good. That's really what it's about, surface area. B as in boy, E as in Edward, R as in, I don't know, N as in Nancy, S as in Sam, T as in Tom, E as in Edward, I as in Isaac, N as in Nancy. That's I Bernstein at thepalmpeople.com. I Bernstein at thepalmpeople.com. Expect me to take a while to respond, but I do eventually respond. And I'm not very friendly on email. I'm apologizing in advance. I'm abrupt. I'm not so formal, but I will respond with the information you want. What meat? Lamb could come out a little gamey. Is it aged? I don't know. I mean, beefy, yes. Gamey, no. Cheddar cheese stinky?